The huge space station floated in the darkness around Proxima Centauri. Inside, 12 different alien races sat around a massive table. Their faces looked angry and worried. For many years, they had been watching a small blue planet called Earth. The humans living there were becoming too dangerous. Captain Juan stood in the control room of Luna Base, looking at the stars through the big window. His uniform was clean and pressed. He had been waiting for something like this to happen. The communication screen in front of him suddenly lit up with a bright flash. "Incoming message from the Galactic Council," said his assistant, a young woman named Lieutenant Yuri. Her voice was calm, but Juan could see the worry in her eyes. The alien face that appeared on the screen was ugly and scary. It had too many eyes and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. "People of Earth," the alien said, "you have grown too strong. Your weapons are too powerful. Your ships are too fast. The Galactic Council has decided that you are a threat to peace in the galaxy." Juan felt his hands become tight fists. He had known this day would come. Earth had been preparing for it for a very long time. "You have 72 standard hours to give up your planet," the alien continued. "If you do not surrender, we will destroy your world completely. Our fleet of 50,000 warships is already coming to your solar system. You cannot win against us." The screen went dark. The control room became very quiet. Everyone was looking at Captain Juan, waiting to see what he would do. "Get me Admiral Nara," Juan said in a strong voice. "Tell her it's time." Admiral Nara was the most important military person on Earth. She was smart and brave, and she had been planning for this day for many years. Her office was deep inside a mountain where it would be safe from alien attacks. When Juan's message reached her, Admiral Nara smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting to fight for a very long time. "Jiho," she said to the man sitting across from her desk, "call everyone together. It's time to show them what we really have." General Jiho was a tall man with gray hair and serious eyes. He was in charge of something called Deep Ocean Command. Most people on Earth didn't even know it existed. He picked up a special phone that only worked with underwater bases. "This is General Jiho," he said into the phone. "Send the message to all deep stations. Project Leviathan is starting now. Repeat, Project Leviathan is starting now." Far below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, Commander Sora sat in a room full of computers and screens. The room was called the Mariana Operations Center, and it was 7 miles underwater. The water pressure outside would crush a normal submarine in seconds, but this place was built to last forever. Sora was a small woman with quick hands and bright eyes. She had been working down here for 20 years, waiting for this moment. When General Jiho's message came through, she felt her heart start beating faster. "All stations, this is Mariana Control," she said into her microphone. "The waiting is over. Begin awakening procedures for all sleeping fleets. Repeat, begin awakening procedures for all sleeping fleets." All around the world, in the deepest parts of every ocean, people received Sora's message. They had been waiting in underwater cities and bases that no alien satellite had ever detected. Some of these people had been living underwater for their whole lives. Their grandparents had also lived underwater. For 300 years, humans had been building something amazing in the deep places of the ocean. Back on Luna Base, Captain Juan was watching his screens very carefully. The alien fleet was getting closer to Earth. His own ships, the ones that everyone could see, were getting ready to fight. But Juan knew they were not enough. Earth's visible fleet had only 3,000 ships. The aliens had 50,000. "Sir," said Lieutenant Yuri, "our surface ships are ready to fight, but the numbers don't look good." Juan nodded. "Don't worry," he said. "We have more than they know about." On the alien command ship, a creature with 6 arms was looking at pictures of Earth's defenses. The creature's name was hard for humans to say, so people just called it The commander, it had destroyed many planets before Earth. Only 3,000 ships, the commander said to its officers. This will be easy. These humans think they can fight us with such a small fleet. They are stupid. But the commander was wrong. It didn't know about the cities hidden under Earth's oceans. It didn't know about the millions of people who had spent their whole lives preparing for this war. It didn't know about the ships that were sleeping on the ocean floor, waiting to wake up. Admiral Nara stood in her command center, watching reports come in from all over the world. The ocean bases were responding. The sleeping fleet was beginning to wake up. Everything was going according to plan. "How long until the alien fleet reaches Earth?" she asked. 68 hours, replied an officer. "Good," Admiral Nara said. "That gives us enough time." She turned to General Jiho. "Are your people ready?" Jiho smiled. "They've been ready for 300 years. In the depths of the ocean, something amazing was starting to happen. Machines that had been sleeping for decades were turning on. Lights were beginning to shine in the deepest, darkest places on Earth. And something very big was getting ready to rise from the bottom of the sea. The aliens thought they knew everything about Earth. They thought humans were just another weak race with a few small ships. They had no idea what was really waiting for them in the dark waters of Earth's oceans. Soon, they would find out just how wrong they were. The countdown had begun. In less than 3 days, the galaxy would see something it had never seen before. The aliens were about to learn that humans had been keeping the biggest secret in the history of space. The ocean floor began to shake. At first, it was just a small vibration, like a tiny earthquake. But then it grew stronger and stronger. Fish swam away in fear as the ground beneath them started to move. Captain Taiho felt the shaking in his feet as he stood in the control room of Deep Station Alpha. This place was 7 miles under the Pacific Ocean, deeper than any normal submarine could go. The walls around him were made of special metal that could handle the crushing weight of all that water above. "Begin the awakening sequence," Taiho said to his crew. His voice was calm, but inside he felt excited. This moment had been planned for hundreds of years. Around him, 200,000 people started working at their stations. These weren't ordinary people. They had been trained since birth to live and work in the deep ocean. Some of them had special changes to their bodies that helped them breathe underwater and see in the dark. Lieutenant Mina climbed into her small submarine and started the engine. Her job was to fly around the awakening fleet and make sure everything was working correctly. As she moved through the water, she could hardly believe what she was seeing. The things she had thought were underwater mountains were starting to move. They weren't mountains at all. They were ships, huge ships, ships so big that each one could hold 1,000,000 people inside. These ships had been sleeping on the ocean floor for so long that sea plants had grown on them. Fish had made their homes in the cracks and spaces on the outside. To anyone looking from above, they looked like natural parts of the ocean floor. But now, they were waking up. Mina watched as the bioluminescent lights began to turn on along the hulls of the massive ships. These lights were like the ones that deep-sea creatures used to see in the dark, but these lights were much brighter and more beautiful. They made the water glow with blue and green colors. "This is incredible," Mina whispered to herself as she flew between the awakening giants. Each ship was different, but they were all enormous. Some looked like huge whales with smooth, curved sides. Others looked like giant jellyfish with long tentacles that moved through the water. A few looked like massive squid, with arms that could grab and move things. Dr. Rena sat in her laboratory, watching screens that showed her the cloaking systems. She was the person who had designed the technology that kept these ships hidden for 300 years. Her hair was white now, but her mind was still sharp. The cloaking system worked by making the ships exist slightly outside of normal space and time. It was like they were there, but also not there at the same time. This made them invisible to all the scanning equipment that the aliens used. Cloaking fields are stable, Dr. Rena reported to Captain Taiho. All ships are maintaining stealth as they prepare to surface. The first wave of ships began to rise from the bottom of the ocean. These were the smallest ones, but even they were huge compared to normal spacecraft. There were 100,000 ships in this first group, and they all started moving upward at the same time. Captain Taiho watched the reports coming in from all over the world. Ships were rising from the deepest parts of the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and even the Arctic Ocean. Everywhere there was deep water, there were ships waking up. Status report from all sectors, Taiho called out. Atlantic. Fleet reporting ready? Came a voice from his communication system. Pacific Fleet reporting ready? Came another voice. Indian Ocean Fleet reporting ready? Arctic Fleet reporting ready? One by one, every hidden fleet around the world reported that they were ready to surface. Taiho felt proud of his people. They had worked so hard for so long to prepare for this day. The ships were not made of ordinary metal like the spacecraft that most planets used. Instead, they were made of something called programmable matter. This special material could change its shape and properties depending on what was needed. Right now, as the ships rose through the water, their hulls were changing from deep sea mode to surface mode. The materials were becoming lighter and stronger. The engines were switching from underwater propulsion to spaceflight systems. Mina flew alongside one of the giant ships as it rose toward the surface. She could see the hull changing color from dark blue to silver. She could see new parts appearing on the outside as the ship prepared itself for space travel. "It's like watching something come alive," she said into her radio. Back in Deep Station Alpha, Captain Taiho was coordinating with all the other underwater bases. There were thousands of these bases hidden all over Earth's oceans. Each one had been built in secret, with technology that was far more advanced than anything the surface world knew about. The people living in these underwater cities had sacrificed a lot to be here. They had given up living on the surface so that they could protect Earth from threats like the one that was coming now. Many of them had never seen sunlight or breathed natural air. But they had done it willingly because they knew how important their job was. "First wave approaching surface," reported Lieutenant Mina. "All systems are green." Captain Taiho smiled. "Good. Begin Phase 2. Wake up the big ones." Deep in the ocean trenches, even larger ships began to stir. These were the city ships, the ones that could hold millions of people each. They had been sleeping for so long that entire ecosystems had grown around them. Now they were starting to wake up too. The alien advance scouts at the edge of the solar system suddenly detected something strange. Their instruments were picking up massive energy readings from Earth's oceans. But that was impossible. The oceans were just water. There couldn't be anything down there. But their instruments didn't lie. Something big was happening in Earth's deep waters. "Report to the main fleet," the scout captain ordered. "Something is wrong. Earth is not what we thought it was." As the first ships broke through the surface of the ocean, water poured off their hulls like waterfalls. The ships were so big that they created waves that could be seen from space. And this was just the beginning. The awakening had started, and nothing would ever be the same. The ocean exploded upward in 1,000 different places around the world. Massive ships burst through the surface like whales coming up for air, but these whales were the size of cities. Water fell from their hulls in sheets, creating waterfalls that could be seen from orbit. Admiral Kiro stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Depth Bringer. This ship was so huge that it took 15 minutes to walk from one end to the other. As it rose from the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, millions of gallons of seawater poured off its hull like rain. "Hull transformation at 60%, reported his first officer, Lieutenant Wu Jin. "Bioorganic components are adapting to atmospheric conditions." Kiro nodded as he watched his ship change around him. The walls were shifting from their underwater configuration to space combat mode. The metal seemed alive, flowing and reshaping itself as the ship prepared for battle among the stars. Captain Yuna led her squadron of stealth destroyers as they broke through the surface of the Pacific Ocean. Each of her ships was the size of a small city, but they moved through the water with incredible grace. The technology that powered them was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Gravitational drives online," Yuna reported to her crew. Switching from hydro propulsion to stellar drive systems, her ships used a special kind of engine that could bend gravity itself. This allowed them to move through water, air, and empty space with equal ease. To anyone watching, it looked like magic. The alien advance scouts couldn't believe what their instruments were telling them. Their captain, a creature with purple skin and 4 eyes, stared at the readings in shock. "This cannot be correct," the alien captain said. "Scan again." But the second scan showed the same impossible results. The space around Earth was filling up with ships. Not hundreds of ships, or even thousands. There were hundreds of thousands of ships, and more were appearing every minute. Colonel Do-Yun worked frantically in his command center aboard New Atlantis, humanity's largest underwater city ship. His job was to make sure that all 1 million ships in the fleet moved together perfectly as they rose from the oceans. "Section Alpha 7 is approaching surface," came a report through his headset. "Section Beta 12 has cleared the thermocline," came another. "Section Gamma 3 is beginning atmospheric adaptation. Reports flooded in from every part of Earth's oceans. The coordination required was incredible. 1 million ships, all rising at the same time, all needing to avoid crashing into each other. But Do-Yun and his team had practiced this for decades. Every person in the underwater cities had trained for this moment. They knew exactly what to do. On the surface of Earth, people looked up at the sky in amazement. The news reporters didn't know what to say. Words seemed too small for what they were seeing. This is impossible," stammered one reporter as she watched a ship the size of Manhattan rise from the ocean near New York City. "Where did these ships come from? How long have they been down there?" The ship that rose near Japan was even bigger. It was shaped like a giant manta ray, with wings that spread across the water for miles. As it lifted into the air, seawater streamed from its wings like silver curtains. Admiral Kiro's ship, the Depth Bringer, finally cleared the ocean surface completely. It hung in the air above the Atlantic like a floating mountain. Its hull was dark blue and covered with patterns that looked like ocean waves. Along its sides, thousands of smaller ships were launching, like bees leaving a hive. The alien scouts sent panicked messages back to their main fleet. "Emergency transmission to Fleet Command," the purple-skinned captain said into his communicator. "Earth is not defenseless. Repeat, Earth is not defenseless. They have a massive fleet, bigger than anything we've ever seen." On the main alien command ship, the commander received this message with disbelief. How could a primitive planet like Earth have such a large fleet? Their intelligence had said that Earth only had 3,000 ships. "Show me the tactical display," the commander ordered. When the holographic display appeared, the commander's 6 arms began to shake. The space around Earth looked like a swarm of metal insects. There were so many ships that they blocked out parts of the planet when viewed from space. Captain Yuna's destroyer squadron took their position in the growing formation. Her ships moved like a school of fish, turning and banking together without any visible communication between them. The alien scouts had never seen ships move with such perfect coordination. The technology behind the human ships was beyond anything the Galactic Council had ever encountered. The hulls seemed to be alive, constantly changing and adapting. The weapons looked organic, like they had grown rather than been built. "Energy readings are off the charts," reported the alien weapons officer to the commander. "Each of their large ships is putting out more power than our entire advanced fleet combined." The commander felt something it had rarely experienced in its long military career: fear. Back on Earth, Admiral Nara watched the deployment from her command center. Everything was going according to plan. The first wave of ships was in position. The second wave was beginning to surface. Soon, all 1 million ships would be visible. "Status report," she called out. "All Pacific fleets have surfaced successfully," came the reply. "Atlantic fleets are at 90% deployment. Indian Ocean fleets are moving into position. Arctic. Emergency reserves are standing by." General Jiho stood next to Admiral Nara, watching the tactical displays. After 300 years of preparation, their people were finally showing the galaxy what humans were really capable of. "The aliens have stopped their advance," Jiho reported. "Their fleet is holding position at the edge of our solar system." "Good," Admiral Nara said. "Let them think about what they're seeing." Colonel Do Yoon's voice came through the communication system. "This is New Atlantis Control. All surface operations are proceeding normally. We are ready for Phase 3. Phase A. 3 authorized," Admiral Nara replied. As if in response to her words, even more ships began to rise from the deepest trenches of the ocean. These were the truly massive ones, the ships that could carry entire populations. They were so big that their emergence caused tidal waves on distant shores. The alien advance fleet watched in horror as Earth's true power revealed itself. What they had thought would be an easy conquest was turning into their worst nightmare. Space around Earth was now filled with human ships. They hung in perfect formations, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering that made the aliens' own vessels look like ancient relics. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth had been hiding the greatest secret in the history of space travel. The scientists on the Galactic Council ships stared at their instruments in confusion. Nothing they were seeing made sense. The human ships were doing things that should have been impossible according to everything they knew about physics and engineering. Professor Sunwoo sat in his laboratory aboard the human flagship, preparing to speak with the alien fleet. He was Earth's leading expert on alien technology, but today he would be teaching the aliens about human science instead. "Open a communication channel to the entire alien fleet," Professor Sunwoo said to his assistant. It's time they understood what they're really facing. The aliens received the transmission on every ship in their fleet. When Professor Sunwoo appeared on their screens, he looked like an ordinary human, but the words he spoke would change their understanding of the universe forever. "Greetings to the Galactic Council," Professor Sunwoo said in a calm voice. "You seem confused by our technology. Let me explain a few things that might help you understand." The alien scientists leaned forward, eager to hear what this human would say. "Your ships use fusion power and antimatter engines," Professor Sunwoo continued. "These are good technologies, but they are very limited. Our ships tap directly into zero-point energy. We draw power from the quantum foam itself, from the basic structure of reality." The alien scientists looked at each other in shock. Zero-point energy was theoretical. No one had ever been able to use it as a practical power source. "Your hulls are made of metal and ceramic composites," Professor Sunwoo went on. "Our hulls are made of programmable matter. Every atom can be rearranged at will. Our ships can rebuild themselves, heal themselves, and adapt to any environment instantly." Commander Inwoo demonstrated this by ordering his ship, the Deep Current, to show its capabilities. The alien sensors watched in amazement as the huge human vessel began to phase in and out of normal space-time. One moment, the ship was solid and real. The next moment, it became translucent, like a ghost. Then it disappeared completely, only to reappear in a different location without traveling through the space in between. "How is this possible?" whispered an alien weapons expert. "They're violating the basic laws of physics." The commander of the alien fleet felt its confidence crumbling. "Can our weapons even hit something that can phase out of reality?" "I don't think so, sir," replied the weapons officer. "Our targeting systems can't lock onto something that exists in multiple dimensions at once." Captain Bora prepared her fighter wing for a demonstration flight. She commanded 10,000 small craft, each one piloted by a human whose nervous system had been enhanced and connected to their ship's artificial intelligence. "Fighter wing, prepare for synchronized maneuvers," Captain Bora ordered. The alien. Observers watched as 10,000 human fighters launched from the larger ships. But instead of flying in formation like normal pilots would, they moved like a single living creature. They flowed through space like a school of fish swimming through water. There was no visible communication between the fighters, no radio chatter, no coordination signals. Yet they moved with perfect unity, turning and diving and accelerating, as if they shared one mind. "Sir," reported an alien tactical officer, "there's no command structure that we can detect. Each fighter seems to know exactly what all the others are going to do." What the aliens didn't understand was that each human pilot had become something more than human. Their brains had been connected to artificial intelligences that could process information faster than any organic mind. The pilots and their ships had become hybrid beings, part human and part machine. Captain Bora felt the thoughts of her 9,999 fellow pilots flowing through her consciousness. She could sense their intentions, their movements, their tactical decisions. They were no longer individuals flying separate ships. They were one vast intelligence spread across 10,000 bodies. The alien fleet tried to run combat simulations against the human forces. Every simulation ended the same way. Total defeat for the aliens. Their weapons couldn't hit ships that could phase between dimensions. Their sensors couldn't track fighters that moved with supernatural coordination. "Sir," reported the alien science officer, "I've been analyzing the energy signatures from their ships. Each of their large vessels is putting out more power than our entire dreadnought class, and they have hundreds of thousands of them." The commander felt something like despair. Its fleet of 50,000 ships had seemed overwhelming when they left Council space. Now they felt like toys compared to what the humans had revealed. Professor Sunwoo continued his explanation to the stunned alien fleet. "You're probably wondering about our artificial intelligence systems. Your AIs are sophisticated programs, but they're still just software. Our AIs are genuinely conscious beings. They think, they feel, they dream. They chose to partner with us because they believe in our cause." This revelation was perhaps the most shocking of all. The aliens had been trying to create truly conscious, artificial intelligence for thousands of years, but they had never succeeded. The humans spoke of it as if it were a simple accomplishment. Commander Inwoo's ship, the Deep Current, demonstrated another impossible capability. The massive vessel began to split apart, dividing into dozens of smaller ships. Then, just as quickly, it reformed into a single unit. The programmable matter that made up its hull could separate and recombine at will. "Sir," reported an alien engineer, "that ship just divided itself into 47 separate vessels, each one capable of independent operation. Then it became one ship again. How is that even possible?" The commander had no answer. Everything the humans were showing them challenged the basic assumptions about what space technology could do. Captain Bora's fighter wing performed another maneuver that left the aliens speechless. The 10,000 small ships suddenly accelerated to speeds that should have been impossible for craft of their size. They moved faster than light itself, but without using hyperspace or warp drives. "They're manipulating local space-time," whispered an alien physicist. "They're creating pocket dimensions around each ship to allow faster-than-light travel in normal space." The demonstrations continued for hours. The humans showed the aliens technology that seemed more like magic than science. Ships that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, weapons that could fire through time as well as space, engines that drew energy from parallel universes. The most terrifying thing for the aliens was that the humans seemed to consider all of this normal. They weren't showing off or trying to intimidate. They were simply explaining their everyday technology. We've been preparing for this day for a very long time, Professor Sunwoo concluded his presentation. 3,000 years, to be exact. We've had a lot of time to develop new ideas. The alien fleet hung motionless in space, completely outmatched by technology they couldn't understand or counter. Their weapons seemed like spears and clubs compared to what the humans possessed. The commander finally understood the truth. They hadn't come to conquer a primitive world. They had stumbled into the territory of being so advanced that the gap between human and alien technology was like the gap between starships and stone knives. The real question now was not whether the aliens could defeat the humans. The question was whether the humans would allow the aliens to survive their mistake. Ambassador Eunji stood in the center of the great meeting chamber aboard the human flagship. Representatives from all 12 races of the Galactic Council sat around her, their faces showing fear, confusion, and wonder. The time had come to tell them the truth about humanity's real purpose. You came here thinking we were a threat to galactic peace, Ambassador Eunji began, her voice calm and steady. You believed that our growing power would lead to conquest and destruction. But you were wrong about everything. The alien representatives shifted nervously in their seats. The reptilian delegate, whose scales were normally a proud green, had turned pale with worry. The insect-like hive queen clicked her mandibles anxiously. 3,000 years ago, Ambassador Eunji continued, we received a message from the far edge of the galaxy. It was a warning about something far more dangerous than any war between civilized races. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. It showed the galaxy as it appeared from space, with all its billions of stars and countless worlds. But at the edges, the image showed something dark and terrible approaching. The message came from the last survivors of the previous galactic civilization, Ambassador Eunji explained. A civilization that ruled this galaxy long before any of our current races evolved. They sent us this warning before they were completely destroyed. General Sang-hoon stepped forward to continue the explanation. He was an old man now, but his voice was strong and clear. The enemy they warned us about calls itself the Void Devourers. They come from the empty space between galaxies. They don't just destroy planets or kill populations. They consume entire galaxies, erasing them from existence completely. The alien delegates looked at each other with growing horror. They had thought the humans were the greatest threat they faced. Now they were learning about something infinitely worse. Earth was chosen to be the sanctuary world, General Sang-hoon continued. Not because we were primitive, but because our planet was perfect for the task ahead. The vast oceans provided the ideal hiding place for what we needed to build. Admiral Hyejin took over the explanation. She was a woman who had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. Every human on Earth volunteered for the great project. We extended our lifespans to centuries so that we could participate in the long preparation. We transformed our entire species into a military force. The holographic display changed to show Earth's oceans as they really were. Layer upon layer of cities, shipyards, training facilities, and weapons platforms stretched down into the deepest trenches. The aliens could see that the entire planet had been converted into one massive military base. The underwater cities weren't just shipyards, Admiral Hyejin explained. They were training grounds. For 3,000 years, every human child has been raised as a soldier. We have been becoming the galaxy's secret guardians. The crystalline delegate, whose body was made of living crystal, spoke up in a voice like wind chimes. But why? Why would your entire species sacrifice everything for races you had never met? Ambassador Eunji smiled sadly. Because we learned what happens when civilizations fight each other, instead of preparing for the real threat. The previous galactic civilization was destroyed because they were too busy competing with each other to notice the Void Devourers until it was too late. The holographic display showed images that the long-dead civilization had sent with their warning message. Entire star systems being consumed by creatures that existed partially outside normal space and time. Planets dissolving into nothingness as reality itself was eaten away. We saw what our future would be if we followed the same path, General Sang-hoon said. So we chose a different way. We chose to become something that had never existed before. A species dedicated entirely to protecting others. The alien delegates sat in stunned silence as the full scope of humanity's sacrifice became clear. An entire planet, billions of people, thousands of years of development, all dedicated to preparing for a war that might never come. The million ships you see around Earth are just the beginning, Admiral Hyejin revealed. Hidden throughout our oceans are construction facilities that can build 1 billion more ships. We have spent millennia developing technology specifically designed to fight an enemy that exists between dimensions. The gaseous delegate, whose body was contained in a special atmospheric suit, asked the question they were all thinking. How long do we have before they arrive? Admiral Hyejin's expression became grim. According to our deep space monitoring stations, they should arrive within the next few months. Our long-range sensors have been tracking disturbances at the galactic rim for the past year. The revelation hit the alien delegates like a physical blow. They had come to Earth expecting to fight a simple war of conquest. Instead, they had discovered that the galaxy was about to face an enemy that could erase entire civilizations from existence. "What can we do?" asked the aquatic delegate, her gills fluttering with anxiety. "Our weapons, our ships, our armies, none of them were designed for this kind of threat." "That's why we prepared," Ambassador Yoonji said. "We studied the records that the previous civilization left behind. We learned how the Void Devourers fight. We developed weapons and tactics that can actually hurt them." General Sang-hoon activated another holographic display. This one showed the human fleet in battle formation, but the formations looked strange and organic. The ships moved in patterns that resembled deep-sea creatures. We learned that the Void Devourers have trouble understanding biological patterns, he explained. They are creatures of pure logic and mathematics. When we fight like living things like schools of fish or flocks of birds, they cannot predict our movements. Your underwater training wasn't just about hiding, the Hive Queen realized. You were learning to think and fight like ocean creatures. Exactly, Admiral Hyejin confirmed. Every human pilot has studied the movement patterns of whales, dolphins, and deep-sea creatures. Our ships are designed to mimic the behavior of living things. To the Void Devourers, we appear to be a force of nature, rather than a military threat. The alien delegates began to understand the true genius of humanity's plan. While other races had developed bigger guns and stronger armor, the humans had become something entirely different. They had evolved into the perfect counter to an enemy. That thought in pure mathematics. "Will you fight beside us?" Ambassador Yoonji asked. "Your fleets alone cannot stop the Void Devourers, but together we might have a chance." The delegates looked at each other, then back at the humans who had sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy. The vote was unanimous. As they planned their combined defense, none of them noticed the first distortion appearing at the edge of their sensor range. Space itself was beginning to tear as something impossible pushed its way through from the void between galaxies. The Void Devourers had arrived, ahead of schedule, and the greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin. Space itself began to crack at the edge of the galaxy. The tears in reality looked like black lightning spreading across the stars. Through these impossible wounds in the universe, something horrible began to pour through. The Void Devourers had finally arrived. Fleet Admiral Kyung felt the vibrations through his ship before the sensors detected anything. He was standing on the bridge of Ocean's Fury, a vessel so massive that it was more like a mobile planet than a spaceship. The ship had risen from Earth's deepest ocean trench just hours before, and its biomechanical hull was still adapting to the vacuum of space. "Admiral," called out Lieutenant Hyemen from her sensor station. "We're detecting massive space-time distortions at the Galactic Rim. Whatever is coming through, it's bigger than anything in our database." Fleet Admiral Kyung nodded grimly. He had been preparing for this moment his entire extended life. At 300 years old, he was one of the last humans who remembered the first warnings about the Void Devourers. "Signal all fleets," he commanded. "Operation Deep Current is now active. All ships, assume formation pattern Leviathan 7. Across the solar system, the human fleet began to move. But they didn't move like normal spaceships. Instead, they flowed through space like living creatures of the deep ocean. The massive city ships moved like whales, slow and majestic, but incredibly powerful. The smaller vessels darted between them like schools of fish, their movements perfectly coordinated. Captain Jaewon led the first attack wave toward the Galactic Rim. His ship, the Tide Runner, was designed to look and move like a giant manta ray. Its wings could span several kilometers, and it glided through space with graceful, undulating motions. "All ships, remember your training," Captain Jaewon broadcast to his fleet. "Think like the creatures of the deep. Move like the ocean itself. The enemy understands mathematics and logic, but they cannot comprehend the patterns of life, the void." Devourers that emerged from the tiers in space were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They weren't made of matter in any way that normal beings could understand. Instead, they seemed to be composed of negative space, areas where reality simply didn't exist. The alien council fleets tried to engage the Void Devourers with conventional weapons. Laser beams and plasma cannons fired into the dark entities. But the weapons simply disappeared into the nothingness that made up their bodies. It was like trying to hurt a shadow with a flashlight. "Our weapons have no effect," reported the alien commander to Fleet Admiral Kyung. "They're absorbing everything we throw at them." "That's because you're fighting them like machines," Fleet Admiral Kyung replied. "Watch and learn." Commander Somi coordinated the planetary defense from her station deep within Earth's ocean. The planet itself had been transformed into a massive weapon, but not the kind that any normal military would recognize. Instead of guns or missiles, Earth was equipped with reality-anchoring devices that prevented the Void Devourers from simply erasing local space-time. "Reality anchors are holding," Commander Somi reported. "The enemy cannot delete this section of space while our defenses are active." The human fleet engaged the Void Devourers using tactics that seemed impossible to the watching aliens. Instead of attacking directly, the human ships moved in flowing, organic patterns that confused and frustrated the enemy. Captain Jaewon's squadron flowed around a massive Void Devourer like water flowing around a rock. The enemy tried to lock onto their ships with its reality-consuming weapons, but the human vessels were never where the mathematics said they should be. "The enemy is trying to calculate our next position," Captain Jaewon explained to his pilots. "But we're not following mathematical patterns. We're following the patterns of living things. Stay fluid. Stay unpredictable." The most amazing thing about the human fleet was how all the ships worked together. Fleet Admiral Kyung watched from his command center as 1,000,000 vessels moved with perfect coordination across light years of space. It was like watching a single, vast organism with 1,000,000 different parts. The secret was the quantum entanglement, cores that each ship carried. These devices allowed every human pilot and AI to share consciousness across impossible distances. The entire fleet was connected by a network of thought and intention that made them function as one gigantic intelligence. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Mingyu, "we're receiving tactical data from all fleet elements simultaneously. Every ship knows what every other ship is doing in real time." This shared consciousness was what made the human fighting style so effective against the Void Devourers. The enemy could predict the behavior of individual ships following logical patterns, but they couldn't understand the behavior of 1,000,000 ships that thought and moved as one living creature. The battle raged across multiple dimensions as the Void Devourers tried to use their reality-warping powers to gain an advantage. But the humans had prepared for this too. Their ships could phase between dimensions just like the enemy, following them into the spaces between normal reality. Captain Bora led her fighter wing through a dimensional rift in pursuit of a fleeing void devourer. Her enhanced consciousness allowed her to navigate the twisted non-space between dimensions, while her fighter's biomechanical hull adapted to the strange physics they encountered there. "Target acquired in Subdimension 7, Captain Bora reported, engaging with quantum disruption torpedoes. The weapons that the humans used were unlike anything else in the galaxy. Instead of trying to destroy the void devourers with brute force, they attacked the mathematical foundations that held the creatures together. The quantum disruption torpedoes unraveled the equations that allowed the void devourers to exist. As the battle continued, the Galactic Council forces began to understand how the humans were winning. It wasn't superior firepower or better armor. It was a completely different way of thinking about warfare. "They're not fighting a war," observed the crystalline delegate as she watched the human fleet flow through space. "They're performing a dance that their enemy cannot learn." The tide of battle slowly turned in favor of the Allied forces. The void devourers, for all their terrible power, could not adapt to an enemy that fought like a force of nature. Every time they tried to calculate human behavior, the organic patterns confused their mathematical minds. Fleet Admiral Kyung coordinated the final assault from Ocean's Fury. His massive ship had become the center of a living mandala of vessels that stretched across the entire solar system. Every ship was connected to every other ship through the quantum consciousness network. "All fleets prepare for the final phase," Fleet Admiral Kyung commanded. "Remember what we learned in the deep places of our world. The ocean is patient. The ocean is eternal. The ocean always wins." The human fleet began to move in a pattern that resembled the tides themselves. Waves of ships flowed toward the void devourers, then retreated, then flowed forward again. Each wave was different, unpredictable, alive. The void devourers tried to resist, but they were creatures of logic trying to fight against the patterns of life itself. Slowly, inevitably, they were pushed back toward the tiers in space through which they had entered. "Enemy forces are retreating," reported Captain Jaewon. "They're returning to the space between galaxies." But Fleet Admiral Kyung knew this was not a permanent victory. The void devourers were not destroyed, only defeated. They would return someday, and when they did, humanity would be ready for them again. As the enemy disappeared back into the void, the human fleet began to return to Earth's oceans, but they left behind a network of monitoring stations and construction platforms. The work was not finished. It would never be finished. The galaxy had been saved, but at a cost that few could truly understand. Humanity had revealed itself not as conquerors, but as eternal guardians. They were the deep-dwelling shepherds of galactic civilization, forever watching for threats from the darkness between the stars. In the deepest trenches of Earth's oceans, new ships were already being built. The next million-ship fleet was taking shape in the hidden cities beneath the waves. Humanity had accepted its role as the galaxy's protector, a responsibility that would last until the end of time itself.